Hi there. My name is Michael C. Bryan, and I wanted to welcome you to my channel. It's called Wake Up with Michael. I have a ton of equipment, a shit ton of equipment, and I've been trying forever to figure out how to hook all this stuff up, and I will. We'll get the fancy lights and we'll get the fancy equipment. Until then, I thought to myself, I'm not gonna not put up videos to help people as much as I can until then. So we're doing pretty good with what we have right now. But in the future, there will be videos that I'm going to be putting up on a regular basis. And I wasn't doing this because I couldn't figure out the technical stuff. That's not a good enough reason to do stuff. You just got to do stuff. So, like I said, my name is Michael, and for about 15 years now, I've had a business, and it's called MCB Happier. My name is Michael Christopher Bryan, so it's MCB Happier. Got it? And it began in New York City, and I now live in Los Angeles, in West Hollywood. And for about 15 years professionally, I have been talking to people about their life, the meaning of their life, what they're trying to figure out. And what I wanted to talk about today was something that in this work, it's very complex ideas and principles. And I always got very confused by them. People would talk to me about consciousness and ego and essence and all these things. And I felt like they were kind of talking over my head because I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. Well, then I ended up realizing a couple years ago that I had become one of those people because for so long I've been practicing this work that I wanted to put up a channel where I tell you in very blunt, clear, practical, pragmatic terms in a long form video, because goodness knows I love to talk. My mother was chatty. I'm chatty. What these things I've come to understand mean, having spoken to hundreds of people all around the world. And I want to tell you what people tell me they need. For the longest time, my ego was absolutely intent on telling people what to do and coming at a place of what it needed. It took me a very long time, because my ego's enormous, to understand that it's not about me when people come to me for help. It's about me trying to hear from them what they need and what I can give them to help them. So I'm going to tell you what people have told me they're struggling with and what they need. And I'm going to guarantee you, you're going to hear yourself in this because, we're all struggling with the same thing. We just don't know it because we're in our world. So this channel is going to be taking very complex ideas and as best as I can explaining to you what I've come to understand they mean, how I've seen the explanations on a very, not really basic, but very clear way. People can make sense of these things and apply them. I'm very practical. And while this work and spirituality, and I guess we have to call this spirituality, the spirituality, I've always had a conflicted relationship with God, with the universe. I love the idea that there's something here protecting me, guiding me. I go hot and cold with it because it almost seems too esoteric, too woohoo. I don't see the practical effect. And then I have people who are extremely religious, like Christians or Catholics, or a lot of my friends who are Jewish. They'll say, "Well, that happened because that was God helping you." And I always say to myself, "Was that really though, or did it just happen?" So the bright side of me, the truth of me, and that's what I want to talk about, the real me and the ego. And the real me, whatever I am, whatever you are, loves the idea and thinks there's truth in it. My ego, though, thinks it's a crock of shit. My ego thinks you're delusional. My ego, because I'm from Seattle, born and raised, but I spent well over half my life in New York City. So New York City socialized me. New York City is full of very intelligent, heady people. New Yorkers, we like to get to the deep, deep, deep level of things. So I was always trying to figure out, like, what is faith, what is God, what is ego, what is essence. So I'm not going to make this too cluttered because I've been accused of that many times. While I'm very verbal and, again, I express well, that's not what this is about. This is to help you understand these concepts. And I love YouTube. I friggin' love YouTube. I have been through dark nights of the soul where I've cried. I've had a hard time. I've been broke. I couldn't figure out my emotional tenor, that I didn't understand very complex spiritual ideas. But YouTube which I just love, YouTube, I would see spiritual masters in the touch of a button talk about what these things were, and I understood. I spent years and years listening to people. I am talking years. Small little snippet about me, and then we'll get into ego and then the true self. What ego and true self, as far as I understand it, mean. Now, I don't think I have to say this, and I've been admonished about this. I don't really care. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a clinical anything. My ex-husband is. My father was. My mother was in it for years, and so is my sister. Let's just say I've been surrounded by mental health professionals for years, and I've been told, don't say you're a mental health professional. Don't say you're a therapist. I don't care about any of that. I know that I know what I know because I've struggled and I've helped a lot of people figure out their mental health stuff. So yes, I am a mental health expert because I've been through it. Now, whether or not we need to put credentials on that, whether people need me to go to a school to say that I've studied it so I can teach it or talk about it, that's up to them. I don't care. But I want to make sure you understand that when this information that comes to you is from years of having my own private practice and having heard from people, hundreds of hours of talking to people online and in person, what has helped me heal and what has helped them heal. And I'll also always frame this that in the spirituality, new thought, new think world right now, I think there's a lot of bullshit. I think a lot of the idea is that just think the thought and feel the emotion and then do the actions. A lot of mindset talk right now is quite soothing and it's quite lovely, but I don't think it's as helpful as body work, somatic work. I don't think it's as helpful as calming our neurological system. I think calming the body, knowing we're safe, feeling safe in our body, and then finding thoughts is beneficial. But no matter how many thoughts we think, no matter how many Post-its we put around our house, if we don't feel safe in our bodies, it's not going to help because we're always going to be in fight or flight. And I know a lot about that. So I came to this work because I was born and raised in a house of extreme abuse. My mother was a woman who suffered from borderline personality disorder, which is often referred to, as the whole enchilada of crazy, because she was. She suffered from extreme depression, anxiety. She was wildly mentally abusive to me as a boy. So I was dealing with a very emotionally erratic woman. And I had a father who was a family therapist. So my father watched my mother, and emotional abuse, in my opinion, is more insidious and painful than physical or sexual. So my dad never did anything to stop her. So she really fucked me up in terms of how I felt, thought about myself, and so it resulted in years of struggle. When I was very young, I was kicked out. When they found out I was gay, I was homeless. I was a streetwalker for a while, a prostitute. And then I had a very dark 20s childhood, like from my childhood to about 8 until my late 20s. I had many suicide attempts. And then in my 30s, things were just dark because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get my shit together, what was wrong with me. Well, I was raised in a house of madness. And then in my 40s, it really all fell apart because I couldn't get my life together. And then when my relationship ended at the end of my 40s, early 50s, and I'm now 60, that's when I dove into this work very deeply to figure out my emotional health. And I found my emotional wealth. I really do feel like, while I am not a financially, physically wealthy man right now, and believe me, I know the wealth consciousness people will say, yes, you are, and you have it all. Let's just say it's not in my hot little hand yet. Emotionally, I'm very wealthy. Physically, I'm very wealthy because I've worked very, very hard to find a place of emotional balance and physical balance. And that was years of work. And I want to help you take less time than it took me. So let's just say I come from a very startling, shocking, tumultuous past. There are many other things I'll talk about later. Believe me, I've been told I overwhelm people. It's just my natural style. But for your purposes watching here, I'm hoping to soothe you, answer, and because this beautiful platform allows long-form talks, I always feel very constricted by the mandate of branding people, marketing people, social media people, that I've got to change your life in 60 seconds. That doesn't happen. See, real spiritual change, real spiritual awakening, really spiritually getting your emotional and physical and then resulting financial shit together, you're not going to figure it out in a meme. It's not going to happen in a 60-second video, because the thing that no one wants to say is it's work. You have to work for it. But darlings, isn't that the best work there is? To finally learn to love yourself enough to do the work. Like, I was never unconditionally loved as a child. Because of that, I never knew what unconditional love felt like. It was a fucking concept. It wasn't like a reality. So if there's one thing that I'm trying to do with these videos, as I'll be posting, and I really am making an effort to at least twice a week, is to help you learn through what I've been through and what all the clients I have been through. And this is just a gift. There's no... the reason I didn't put these videos up, because I kept being told by everyone, this is a business funnel. This is how you make money. You're a salesman. You're in sales. That's how you make money. And it is true. I make money and pay my bills through working with clients. But if I'm really here to help people, and I'm really here to offer, and if whatever it is, and I'm still trying to figure out God is, I'm not going to go into the Jesus talk, because that's still like, I can't figure all that out. I love the teachings of Jesus. I don't know if I would say I'm going to do what Jesus does. However, the Bible has some really cool stuff about Jesus. It's pretty awesome. Pretty great writing, actually, too. I'm a writer, so I love the writing in there. My job is to help. That is my job. My job is to help. Now, if the universe, God, source energy, whatever we call all these interchanging things, wants to bring into my life abundance in the form of money, I'll take it happily for this. But that's really, I had to let go of all that for YouTube. Because I'm not trying to drive you to hire me. I'm not driving you to, I'm just trying to reach you and to say YouTube saved me in many ways. And I hope that I can help you understand that you have all the things you need inside of you to save yourself right now. You don't need me, anyone, to save you. Of course, you talk to God and Jesus and Christianity, you're looking for salvation. But we'll get into all that later. So let's have a little talk, shall we? Let's have a little talk, I always feel like Linda Richmond, Mike Myers, Linda Richmond. The White House. It's neither white nor is it a house. Discuss. Let's talk about ego, and let's talk about you, whatever you are. Now, I'm going to tell you what I've heard people tell me and what I've used as a way to look at my life and understand what ego is and to understand what self is, and why I'm hearing from a lot of people that they're struggling right now. So you can imagine a lot of people tell me, with the current political climate for some people, with the current world climate for some people, with all the challenges in the world right now, they're having a very hard time feeling excited for the future. They're frightened. They don't feel safe. They are, the people tell me that they're very confused why more people are not more concerned. They're baffled. They don't understand why people aren't doing more, aren't worried more. So they're very caught up in an emotional state of chaos, which is absolutely understandable. This happened during COVID when I worked with a lot of people. So what people were asking me was, I need help to figure out how to make it through this and to feel better in the midst of all this, but also do something. I need to do something. That's what everybody was asking me. And so my way to help them understand this was to open up a discussion about ego and about essence. Now, you're going to hear me say this a lot, but Eckhart Tolle, he's the grandmaster sloth man of the world. I recommend Eckhart Tolle to everyone, and about 50-50 with him. He talks like a sloth. He's just very slow, very German, raised in the UK. So, there you go. And he's much older now. However, that man has identified ego beautifully, better than just about any, I think, spiritual teacher alive right now. Oprah said he's probably the only spiritual teacher she knows that does not have an activated ego. And she should know, because she's got a big ego. And I'm saying this, okay, I've got an enormous ego. This is why I can talk to you about this. My ego is huge. So when people would say to me, how do I not get so upset? How do I get not so caught up in the world? How do I not get so upset about the things that are happening now? What I try to explain to them, and what I've tried to understand myself, and have spent years reading and implementing, is there is a a sense. So an ego, okay, an ego. Now, this is my understanding, so this hopefully will help you. An ego is not us. The ego is not you. Okay, so just take that first. So the ego is a construct, a creation to operate in the world. And I would like to preface this again, because who knows if I'll ever get comments on these. This is my understanding. So if people wish to get very clinical and detail it more, have a heyday in the comics. But this is my comics is better. Comments. That this is my understanding to help me help other people manage in the world. So an ego is a creation from the mind. Now, the mind has thoughts. So my training and my experience in life has always been about how do we understand that we're not the mind, not the mind's thoughts, and we are not the ego, which is created out of the mind's thoughts. Well, first, just let that sink in. So, again, this perspective that I have found helps me and many people is we are not the mind's thoughts. Now, when I say that to people, they say, no, I like to think things through. I like to use my mind. And I hear that and I say to them, okay, just test something out though. Is there a possibility that you don't have to think things through, but you can instead just be in a state of observing the thoughts, right? So if you just observe the thoughts, but don't listen to them as fact, and just observe them, then what is the entity thing that's observing you observing the thoughts? Stick with me. So what is the thing that's observing you observing the thoughts? It's you. So if you're a person that's very intellectual, lives in a world of your head like many of us do, I do too, my family definitely does, then it's an over-intellectualization, which means you rely upon understanding the world because you live in your head. Emotions are terrifying. So the ego is created by the thoughts of the mind about the world and people and everything that's outside of us. So the ego is created out of the mind's thoughts about things. Now, the mind just does its own thing. It should be crazy making. The mind is always doing its own thing. We cannot, in my experience, and many people have told me this, we cannot stop the mind's thoughts. It's just going to think. So it's like a hungry toddler who's throwing a tantrum. You may try to stop it. You just got to kind of let it run its course. The mind will always think on its own. But if you're willing to entertain the idea that we are not the mind's thoughts, then our work is to simply take our attention off of the mind and just observe the mind doing its things, but do not believe the thoughts it says about the world. Because the ego is created out of all those crazy-making negative thoughts from the mind about the world. So what that means is there's a perspective of this world and a perspective of you and a perspective of political figures, a perspective of the economy, a perspective of certain people that the ego has based upon the mind's thoughts. Now, if the mind's thoughts are always about, and this is as far as I've understood this, and it actually makes sense because I've seen it in practice with hundreds of people, the mind's thoughts are always about defensiveness, about protection, about warding off problems. It's always looking for a problem. It's a very negative state. The mind's very negative. It's not dissecting and understand the different levels of things. It's just always spewing these negative thoughts. And those negative thoughts create this identification of ego, and we think we are the ego. So we really do think we are the negative thoughts that the mind thinks, and we feel it's perfectly logical because the ego convinces us that we are it. We are not the ego. We are not the mind's thoughts. We are not the ego created from the mind. we think the true self, what we are, this thing we are, is the ego. And it's convinced us of that because the thoughts the mind thinks that helps to build this ego, which we identify as we think we are it, are quite vile. So that's why the sign, see, this is the strange thing. This is just gross, but the ego loves when we suffer. The ego loves when we're in pain, when our body's in pain, when we're sick, when we're fighting, when we're arguing, when we're feeling disempowered, because the ego thrives on our pain. Now that's completely, just so we are clear, I'm a little vulgar sometimes. I'm from New York. I drop F-bombs now and then. I just want to let you know, I hope this doesn't drive you out of the work, but I can't help it. Because I have a lot of people who just want the bottom fucking line in this work. And there's a very sweet, kind, loving, I'm all those things, thing in spirituality and new help and new thought and positivity that is, to me, a little too goody-goody. I mean, I'd love to be Dolly Parton, I'm really good, but Dolly Parton has a raunchy sense of humor. She just doesn't show it to you. I'm going to just use some swear words now and then. So this fucking ego, it loves when we hurt. So the way you know an ego is activated is you're right and somebody is wrong, and you're going to make sure they know. The ego loves to complain. Nothing is ever good enough. The ego is never happy. So it complains, it kvetches. There's always a problem, right? So we see it in, film and television, and it's very funny. But, we laugh at it because we realize that's us. But in real life, it's obnoxious. No one wants to hear you complain. No one wants to hear us kvetch because that's ego activated. Ego needs to be seen. Ego needs to be noticed. Ego is always posing. Ego is always looking for people to notice them. Ego is always about, what do I get out of this? Ego is all about status. Ego is all about power. The ego always has an opinion and a perspective of things that is based upon injustices and grievances. And the more we listen to the mind's thoughts and the correlation to ego and its perspective, the more upset and the more in pain we are. Now, the solution to this is you can never stop the mind's thoughts from being created. I have asked people over the years to meditate and to play with the mind's thoughts, and every single person has said, I have monkey mind, I can't stop the mind. So I've learned over the years to say, have a meditative lifestyle. If you meditate in the morning, which I used to recommend for years, I don't anymore, that's fabulous. But really it's about living a life where you are in the present moment. Now, to do that is the training. To do that is the work. So there's the perspective of the world from the ego's place. It's angry, it's frustrated, it's rageful, it's sad, it's in pain, it's always a struggle, everything is hard, this person's a moron, blah, 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 blah. This person's an idiot, why don't they understand, why do people ignore me, I'm bitter, I'm resentful, all that crap is ego. The solution is to observe yourself observing the mind. And when you observe yourself observing the mind, you're observing the ego in action. You observe the mind, which makes the ego live. You are the observer. The observer is in the world observing, but the emotional state of being present and observing is not a charge in your body of fear, anxiety, rage, terror. See, this work is all about all of us experiencing a rush of peace and calm that comes from inside, because the truth, as I've come to understand it, obsessed with this work for years because I had to, because I was always upset. The truth is, who we are is unassailable. Who we are, what we are, is indestructible. Nobody can get to us what we are. Eckhart Tolle likes to call it the essence, which is a perfect word. The real cannot be hurt by any outside force. It is eternal. Now, I personally am playing with all the ideas of God and that being a Jesus or Christ consciousness. I don't know if I quite align with that rush. As many people say, it's the Holy Spirit. I'm playing with all that. But I can say when I'm observing myself, observing the mind, I get out of the loop of the thoughts, get out of ego identification, and I just live in that state. And these are the two words that in spirituality is like the literal obsession of people in spirituality. The two words are I am, okay? To be. That, that's it. I am. I just am. The reason this is challenging to express because it's a experience, and I'm telling you this, but if you can feel me through this video, you will understand that the work is to connect with the emotional piece that comes from I am. And when you realize you are not the mind's thoughts and not the ego, and you say I am, and you're just very present and out of the loop of the mind, you will suddenly feel a little shift in your body, and the anxiety and the anger and the fear will start to evaporate. And the reason that matters is if you are caught in the loop of your mind's thoughts and the ego identification, you end up getting analysis paralysis. That's what I would do for years. I wouldn't take action. I wouldn't feel excited to take action. And I was somebody who was raised by a mother. My mother took her life. So she never got out from underneath that loop. I was raised to believe that loop was me. And my healing came when I realized I was this thing. I am what I am. As the song goes, I am what I am. I am. So the way to tell if your ego is activated and if you are under the illusion you're the ego versus experiencing the perspective of the world of the true self is by how you feel. You've heard this a million times. If you followed people in spirituality and psychology, how you feel dictates. Now, a lot of people are going to rant and rave about all you have to do is feel good, then you're fine. Just figure out how to do it. I personally need a bit more data than that. That's a little reductive for me, but it's lovely and it's true because when you're in the perspective of the true self, you feel great. You're excited. When you are listening to the mind's thoughts, and the weird part is you are unconsciously doing it. You don't even know. None of us know completely how often we're listening. I used to have panic attacks for 15 years, the kind that would send me to the hospital. This is not an exaggeration. One summer, I went to the hospital 40 times with panic attacks thinking I was dying. So I understand anxiety. I understand depression. I was suicidal for years. And it was because I was listening to how my mind was trained to think from a wildly mentally ill woman, and I thought that was the truth. That everything was against me, that I didn't have what it took. She abused me, so I thought I was a piece of shit, all that stuff. And the reason this work helps is for those of us who had extreme trauma and extreme abuse in our past, it has to be connected to how the physical body feels, the somatic neurological chill out. Once that starts to happen, which happens when you start to realize I am and don't listen to the mind's thoughts, then you start to go, okay, I can now get a handle on this. I can stay out of the mind's loop of thoughts and the ego asserting itself, which it will do repeatedly to take over and say to you, the ego will say, you're an idiot. You need to listen to me. Don't listen to it. It's that strange. When you start to notice how you've been thinking you are the ego, it will fight for dominance and fight to live. You have to fight that ego with all you've got. I'll leave you with this because we're now at 30 minutes. I don't know how long these videos. This is all a test, but I just had to put this out here because that friggin' camera I'm trying to put up, and this is too much work. Everyone's like, oh, you got the perfect microphone, perfect camera. No, we're just going to get this up to help you. If I hope it does. And of course, I always want to hear, oh yeah, what am I supposed to say? Oh, comment and like below if you'd like. If you'd like. I trust enough in the universe to know that when I put this out there, that's all I can do. Everything else is up to the universe, whatever that is. Oh, God or Jesus or Allah. I don't know anymore. I'm just like you. I love this and I know it's real. The words, we'll see. But this is the last thing I'll say. So when I was a child, I was born with something. Probably burying the lead with this, but I've talked about it so much. I'm just going to end with this so you know that I get maybe where you're at, and this is why I think I've been able to hear what people need and can help them as much as I possibly can. I was born with something called failure to thrive syndrome. It's on my birth certificate. So for the first 3 months of my life as a baby, I didn't want to live. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to sleep, anything. And then like a light switch that went off, my mother's doctor told her, and she told me that I was like, switch. And I suddenly decided to eat. I suddenly decided to be held, to live. They don't know what causes it, but it's a stunt in development. I think that I knew what I was coming into in this lifetime with this mother, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to live. What's carried over in my lifetime is I've had this very strong fight within me against insurmountable odds to keep going, to keep fighting. And I know what it's like to want to give up the fight. I know what it's like when things are so challenging that you just wonder, what is it I'm doing wrong? What is it that I don't understand? Why is it that I can't feel better, get my shit together with these things, right? Well, I'm here to tell you the work here is to help you believe in yourself. The work here is to help you learn that you are not the mind's thoughts about yourself and the world. And the work here is to help you connect to this deeper sense of who you are, this I am state. Because in that state, you will find the strength and the power to keep going. Many people will call that Christ consciousness. Many people say that's the God source. Many people say that that is the Holy Spirit, right? You can call it anything you want. My only interest for you is that whatever words work, they are moving you towards the experience of that indestructibleness that is you. I assure you, the outside world will never be what we think we need it to be to feel indestructible. And the hardest part of this work is to find that sense of indestructibleness that is us. I am indestructible, because that's the truth. And to trust that and believe in that and surrender to that and let go of the negative emotion that occurs when we listen to our mind's thoughts about things, or, and this is true, if you're like me and many of us, you've been believing this ego and mind for so long that negative emotions live as deposits in the body. It's like, I'll never forget, I had heart surgery in the 90s. Makes sense, right? Broken heart as a kid. And it took many days for the anesthesia to leave my system. It was like 9 days for it because I was in surgery for, I don't know, it was like, there was a ratio of like however many hours you're in surgery, it's that many hours for the anesthesia to leave your body. That's what deposits of negative emotion are like in our body. And for those of us who've been abused, we have a very, very strong relationship to our nervous system, somatic therapy. That's why it's so beneficial. That's why I'm a workout whore. I work out constantly because it puts me in touch with a strong body. And my health is extraordinary because of that. But it wasn't for a long time. I was sick for years, on and off, always a cold, always sick, always something wrong. Not anymore. And that was only because I would feel the old residual terror, anxiety, fear, sorrow, grief. Grief's a horrible emotion. And I would feel them and then I would let them go. I would feel them and then I would let them go. And that's what we're going to be talking a lot about too. How you can be very aware in your life and feel these things and let them go. And as you do, it clears the path. It clears the path to feel the essence and truth of you, to feel the I amness. But it's muckied up right now. You can't feel it because you got all the shit inside you that you got to let go of. So, all right. 35 minutes. This is a test. We'll see what happens. For anybody watching this, I do hope this was helpful. And I will always say this. The reason I didn't do YouTube is my ego wanted to be seen, and my ego wanted all these things. But really, taking that ego and that little greedy son of a bitch and putting him over there in the corner for a second, I am here for you. No other desire. And so whatever you want, what you're struggling with, I would love to talk about that here on camera. Now, I know I'm supposed to be very cool because YouTube is the new TV, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the off button here, but I'm not going to edit it out because really I just want to get these up, and then soon we'll be much more technically pretty. Bye.